Michael Myers, the one guy who's been back more times than Arnold Schwarzenegger. Yet the Masked Man returns in Halloween 2018, so what better time than for me to rank the entire Halloween franchise from worst to best. Hey everyone, I'm Jim and welcome back to My Movie Obsession, a place for film obsessives. If you find yourself constantly looking for the next movie to obsess over, you're probably in the right place. So without further ado, let's get started and rank the Halloween franchise from worst to best. So right at the bottom of the list, it's Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. I think this is no surprise to a lot of fans. For me, this is the ultimate worst Michael Myers film. It's really unfocused, really silly, really overly gritty, like dark, edgy and bloody for no reason. It's Rob Zombie literally throwing everything he can at the wall and seeing what will stick. This film feels like an experiment, like a wild, crazy, batshit experiment. Like Rob Zombie just was on an LSD one night and went, you know what, I feel like making the craziest Michael Myers movie of all time. So in that respect, it's memorable, but none of it makes sense and none of it works. Michael Myers looks like an absolute tit in this one. He is walking around unmasked in a hoodie. In one of these. In the wilderness. Michael Myers. Enough said. The next one is of course Rob Zombie's Halloween. These two deserve to be at the bottom of the list. They are two of the most unnecessary movies of all time. This one is a little better than Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, just because it actually seems like it has some focus and some intent of what it was trying to do. This one tries to show the origins of Michael Myers' evil by having him be bullied, picked on and have a bad home life. I don't understand how Rob Zombie thinks that this is a reason for someone to become the most mass murdering killer in history. Like, this amount of bullying would probably make someone angry at the world and a little bit depressed, but it wouldn't turn them into the Incredible Hulk of slasher villains. The second half of the movie is like a more gritty version of John Carpenter's classic. It just has Michael Myers killing people brutally, and it has him kind of being more uncompromising, more on screen, more aggressive. And, you know, the second half of this movie, if you just want a madcap slasher film, I guess it's watchable, but it's just not very good when compared with what it's remaking. Next one on the list is going to annoy a lot of people. It is indeed Halloween 3. I know this film has a lot of fans, I know, and I respect you guys, and I get it. I love 80s horror movies. I love that vibe. I love the tone of a lot of 80s horror movies, where they were just crazy, madcap, campy at times, silly, but they had what films don't have today. They have practical effects, they have genuine scares, and they have kind of that feeling of nostalgia to them. I understand, I get it, but I just do not like Halloween 3 and I've never been able to get into it, and I'm sorry. I wish I could get into Halloween 3. I've tried watching this film time and time again. I know it has a massive cult following, but I just think the film's awkward. I think it's paced badly. I think Tom Atkins is a bad lead. He's really unconvincing. I think that the main villain guy in this is laughable and he's not intimidating at all. I think that the storyline is a good idea, and I don't just hate the film because it doesn't have Michael Myers in. I just didn't find it very interesting. I found it quite bland. There are a few scenes here and there which are pretty edgy and pretty crazy, like, you know, children heads turning into worms and all that sort of shit. But I think this film has one of the biggest cop-out endings in movie history. It's like the ultimate. They were sitting there at 3 AM smoking some blunts going, how can we end this shit? Just have the world end. What, so the bad guy just wins? Yeah, bad guy just wins. World ends. It's just a real big cop-out, like, that this ends with, we don't know what to do to stop the bad guys, so let's just have the world end. Halloween Resurrection is next, and yes, I place it above Halloween 3, please don't hate me. I think Resurrection is enjoyably bad. You know, I find it laughable, truly laughable, but I could have some fun at how truly absurd this film is. You know, everyone talks about it, but it really is Busta Rhymes versus Michael Myers.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
And not in a rap battle, in a martial arts battle. I'd rather have seen him in a rap battle. It would have been less degrading to Michael. At least Michael could have spit some bars. This movie had a really good idea, I think. You know, this was when reality TV was first coming in, so it's kind of fascinating to look back and see an early sort of showing of that, and Halloween Resurrection does have that. But, you know, it just makes a bland slasher film in the midst of a decent idea. It's just the point where they were going, what can we now do with Michael Myers? Let's kill off Laurie Strode and then have him go home, because what else can we do? We've carried this shit on so much. Michael Myers has just got to go home and live under his house like a hermit. So he goes home, lives under his house, and a bunch of kids come in. Michael can't catch a break, he just wants to go home. Halloween Resurrection, you know, it has a fast pace and it's laughably bad and it's stupid. For that reason I place it above a few other of the Halloween movies. Halloween 6 is next. Now, I used to defend Halloween 6. I used to defend it. And of course it's better than the others that will blow it on this list. It is a terrible film, Halloween 6, whatever cut you watch, theatrical producers. But I do sympathise with the filmmakers at this point, because if you were going to carry on Michael Myers, and they had no choice to, because they were going to constantly being asked to make more films, you had to add something to it. So if you think about it, the first Halloween didn't really have a story. You know, it didn't. It was just kind of random. A random murderer goes back and just kills a bunch of people. There's not much story. If you're going to carry it on, you need to create a story. And they created a bad story. They made Michael Myers a victim of a cult, of a bunch of people trying to control him and follow him around and this and that. So in this film, the producer's cut comes. I'm grouping both the producer's cut and the theatrical cut on this list together, because I think they're equally bad in different ways. But Michael Myers, of course, has a baby with his niece. Yeah, Michael Myers, in one of the most hilarious moments in movie history, but one of the most demented, is standing there during a cult ceremony, being controlled like a little bitch. Not the boogeyman, he's being controlled by just a bunch of men, and they're trying to sacrifice the lead girl in this. And she turns around and says to Michael, "The baby's yours, isn't it, Michael?" And Michael stands there like a stud, like an absolute stud. "Yeah, the baby is mine." What the fuck? And then you make Michael Myers get stopped by some stones. The immortal Michael Myers has been shot 6 times, fallen off a balcony, stabbed in the eye of a needle, blown up, shot by the police multiple times. And then you sprinkle some stones in front of him and he stops and freezes in place.
Tommy, where is he? It worked. Power of the ruin stopped him. Michael. What have they done to you?
That is beyond comprehension. That is possibly the worst moment in slasher movie history. There is so much ludicrous nonsense in Halloween 6. The only reason it's a little bit further up the list than a few of the other movies is because it's pretty fast paced and entertaining. There's some good kills, there's some brutal kills, and Michael Myers can look menacing, can look scary at times, and the direction is pretty good for a 90s slasher film. Yeah, and the music, the score is pretty good. There's some good elements, and I probably would prefer the theatrical cut a tiny bit more to the producer's cut, because it doesn't have Michael having a fucking kid. But it's still pretty bad, but I still place it above a few other of the movies, because at least I can kind of watch it and be entertained for some of it, you know. And you know, it does have some of the best kills in the series. Halloween 5 is next. Now, this movie introduces a lot of the elements that were paid off in Halloween 6. I don't have the same problems a lot of people have. I didn't hate the character of Tina, I really didn't. I put my hands up, I didn't hate Tina. And the reason I didn't hate her is because she's just a friend of Rachel's. She has no connection to Jamie at all. And she sacrifices herself for her, you know, multiple times. You know, she takes on kind of guardianship of this little girl when she had no need to. She could have just fled once all this shit kicked off, and she doesn't. She stays and she protects Jamie. I think Tina's got a good heart in this. She is a bit annoying, she is a bit frustrating, and I think one of the things that annoyed fans most is that she replaced Ellie Cornell. Killing off Ellie Cornell, who was a likeable character in Rachel, you had kind of found your replacement for Laurie Strode. And we really rooted for her in Halloween 4. To kill her off so quickly in Halloween 5 just makes no sense, because it's like, you're looking for likeable characters in this series if you're going to carry it on. And they just kill her. And a lot of fans just really weren't happy with that, and they'd rather see Rachel than Tina. Michael Myers' mask looks like a load of old arse in this film. It's one of the worst Michael Myers masks. It is pathetic. Donald Pleasance in this, his character becomes a bit crazy, a bit too much over the top, a bit too much of an old bastard, an old creep in this, and which is a shame because he's one of the greatest characters in this series. So, you know, there's hit and miss in Halloween 5. However, despite there being some misses in Halloween 5, I do think it has a lot of good pace, a lot of good kills. I do think that the film keeps me entertained, it's not boring, and I do kind of find Michael scary in this in certain moments, even though he looks like a plonker, so that must be an achievement. I do think the second half of the film is very, very memorable and kind of saves the movie in my opinion. Next is Halloween 2, the sequel that takes place on the same night, the longest night ever. Halloween 2, the longest night. Honestly, it is pitch black at the end of Halloween 1. What time was it at the end of Halloween 1? I'm predicting midnight, surely, after all the crap that went down. Halloween 2 goes on for another, I mean, this shit's going on till 6 AM. It's the longest night. I used to have a big problem with Halloween 2. I didn't really like it because for me, it kind of changes what the first film did, in my opinion. It makes it more of a conventional slasher film. But then I got more into slasher films and I thought, you know, as a slasher film, Halloween 2 is pretty fun, it's pretty entertaining, and having it on the same night does link it to the first movie. And there are certain moments where it does feel like the first movie, but it's kind of the first movie dipped into the slasher movie formula that was becoming massive when this came out. I think there's a lot of good kills in Halloween 2. It becomes more brutal, Michael becomes more morbid, he becomes more ruthless, and he kills more people. So he's kind of not in the shadows anymore, he's kind of a Frankenstein in this, he's kind of completely and utterly unstoppable. He is a conventional slasher villain. And it was a bit sad that this was only the second movie, this was the same night, let alone the second movie, and he'd already changed into every other slasher villain. But there is some really good tension in this. I think the scene where Michael's chasing Laurie through the hospital is great. I think the hospital setting is pretty good, all the different passageways, the darkness, the kind of spooky atmosphere of a hospital adds to this as well. And, you know, it's got an amazing culmination, which people don't forget, and Donald Pleasance is once again on form as Dr. Loomis. Next up, I'm going to place Halloween 2018. I really do think they nailed a lot of what makes Michael Myers scary in Halloween 2018. They make him that boogeyman again of Halloween 1978. In some moments, he is the closest to the original Michael Myers we've ever seen since the 1978 movie. There are some really, really good individual scenes in this, like the closet scene. I love that. It's literally a child seeing the boogeyman in the closet. It's a wonderful idea. When he kills that kid in the yard, it's brilliant, very, very well done. You know, and Michael Myers is uncompromising. He's morbid, he's evil in this film, and they really do well to recapture that essence that he had. Kills are also crazy and brutal and vile in this film. It goes back to almost Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 type kills, but it kind of works because it's the correct Michael Myers doing them. However, there are a few moments where they try to pay too much tribute to the sequels and the movie ends up all over the place. You know, 1 minute it's paying tribute to Halloween 5, 1 minute it's paying tribute to 4, to 6, to H2O, you know, just constantly Michael Myers trying to go on his greatest hits tour, basically. And we see him too much in certain scenes. We see him great in certain scenes, but in others he looks silly because we see him too much. And it's a real kind of uneven movie, but it's one I really enjoyed watching. It's very, very entertaining. Had a wonderful central performance by Jamie Lee Curtis. A wonderful look at trauma and mental health, which I think was absolutely fantastic. I love how it didn't make Laurie Strode and Michael Myers brother and sister. It goes back to that random menace of Michael Myers in the first film, and I enjoyed that. There are a lot of flaws to Halloween 2018, but it is still in my top 5 Halloween movies. Next one is Halloween H2O. Yep, Halloween H2O does push out Halloween 2018. All hail the 90s slashers. Halloween H2O I really had a massive soft spot for so many years, and I still really do, but now I can kind of admit it. I can see a lot of the flaws. You know, I do think Michael Myers' mask is possibly the worst it has ever been in the entire series. He looks like a complete donkey. But other than that, I really do like H2O. I think it has a fantastic pace, you know, and I think the opening of this movie is possibly the best opening in the entire Halloween series. I'll say it, even rivaling the first movie. I'll say it, yeah, I went there. Michael Myers going back to the nurse from the original movie and ransacking her house looking for the files on Laurie Strode is staggeringly well done. They try and make this scene as much like the first film as they can, and it's one of the most times in the Halloween sequels, including Halloween 2018, that they captured the 1978 film. This opening scene is brilliant. And this film mixes the 90s slasher vibe with, of course, the John Carpenter Halloween vibe. And I think that was really wise. People look at this film now and say it's dated. You have to remember that in the 90s, Scream was the shit. Scream was what everyone was loving. The 90s slashers were the current hip thing. Michael Myers was kind of a relic of the past. And to actually make a movie which had the 90s slasher vibe and made Michael Myers fit into the culture of slasher villains again, while still paying tribute to him and while still presenting him as great, but being sure to make it a 90s slasher film, I thought was a genius idea. I really do think that the last hour of this movie is fantastic. I think it's better than the last hour of Halloween 2018, I'll say it. And I do still really love Halloween H2O. So number 2 is, of course, Halloween 4, the sequel that brought Laurie Strode's daughter into the mix. Don't ask. If you can't work out how she had a daughter when you look at the continuity of this franchise, I don't blame you. Don't ask. So Michael Myers is targeting a child in this, and I really enjoyed that. It's one of the best parts of this movie. I really do think Michael Myers is really, really effective when he's seen through a child's eyes, like when Tommy sees him in the original Halloween. You know, he literally is the boogeyman then. He's not even an escaped murderer. He's literally the boogeyman. He's a figment of a child's imagination come to life. He's a nightmare. He's a nightmarish character in this because he's stalking this young child who doesn't understand why he's after her. He's literally her worst fear come to life. Danielle Harris as Jamie Lloyd is one of the most sympathetic child characters of all time. It's a wonderful performance. She has become beloved with the Halloween fans, and she really deserves to be. It's one of the best child performances ever. It is kind of the beginning of zombie Michael. You know, he's very much not a human being in this. He's indestructible, he's huge, he's like a football player in this, and his mask is absolute dick. It's sort of a mask that you catch in Crash Bandicoot. It looks pathetic, it looks cartoonish, it looks rubbish. It looks like a Michael Myers imitation. But despite that, Michael is creepy in this. They do make a point of shooting him sparingly. He's not in much of the film, except for the moments where he's just, you know, finally on screen as an unstoppable badass. But when he is, even though it's not the Michael of the first movie, seeing him on the roof of a house, stalking, you know, is incredible. Is brilliant. It's a wonderful image. Michael Myers stalking, you know, Rachel and Jamie on the roof of a house. How can you not be sitting there on your edge of your seat? I just think this is a really well-paced film, very well executed, very well directed. It has some great atmosphere. It really does feel like Halloween. It has a nice fall feeling to the movie. And even though Michael is now a conventional slasher villain, he's still shown sparingly in the shadows when he needs to be. Donald Pleasence is still on fine form in this movie. He has probably his best speeches in the series since the first film in Halloween 4. He's great in this, you know, and I love the confrontation he has with Michael at the gas station. You really feel Loomis's fear of Michael and his despair at what he's doing, but Loomis's good heart when he asks him to take him instead of another victim. It just really makes you like him. Loomis is still that brilliant protagonist he was in Halloween 1 and 2. If you can have Michael Myers look like a football player with a stupid mask and you still pull off something somewhat great, you've done something. My number 1 is, of course, Halloween 1978. Has there ever been a Halloween ranking video where Halloween 1978 hasn't been number 1? I bet there is. I look like a twat. But Halloween 1978 it's just fantastic. I recently had the privilege of watching it in the cinema for the 40th anniversary. I think this film is the greatest horror movie ever made. I really, really do. I think the character of Michael Myers in this film, shown standing there, staring blankly. You have to remember, you can't just view him as the Michael of the sequels. You have to remember yourself sitting in front of the TV when you're a kid and seeing this blank face staring. And John Carpenter is a master at, his villains don't need to be running up to you screaming or being the Incredible Hulk or, you know, stabbing and all out, you know, warfare and blood and guts. They can just stare at you, and they are more terrifying than any of that stuff. The great thing about the film is you don't know what he is in this. You know, he's an escaped murderer with a supernatural edge. So there's something to the guy, there's something off about him, and there's something random about him, but because it's the first film, you don't have enough time to get into him being what he later went on to be, so you don't know. He could still be a man, he could be supernatural. There's so much terror in the uncertainty of Michael Myers. What makes me laugh is that there are Halloween fan films that have this mask. They have it. Somehow getting hold of this mask in the sequels was like getting hold of the truth about Area 51. You know, Jamie Lee Curtis in this film isn't necessarily a incredible acting role, but she's so likeable, she's so earnest in the film that it is one of the most likeable debut performances of all time. She's so sympathetic, you want to see her come out on top, you don't want Michael to kill her. The way this is built up, the way that Tommy Wallace sees the boogeyman carrying bodies, lurking around, and no one believes him. It's just slow build of a child seeing him, and just seeing Michael standing there picking his spots is really what Halloween 2018 missed out on. They had it in certain moments, they really did, but this is hypnotising. It's a hypnotising horror film. It draws you in so slowly, it reels you in so slowly. There isn't much blood, there isn't much guts, there isn't much gore. Whenever Michael kills someone, you know, for example when he kills the guy and he hangs him up on the cupboard and he starts looking at him and tilting his head and admiring what he's done, that's more terrifying than a blood and guts kill. It really is. You know, he's just staring at him like, I enjoyed fucking you up, I enjoyed that, and I'm going to stare at you now and admire my handiwork. How creepy is that? And it's crazy that Halloween, John Carpenter wasn't trying really to make an incredible film. He just got together with a bunch of his mates, and with the love of cinema, they made one of the best films ever made. They really did. And the score to it enhances things so well. The score elevates what's already terrifying into realms of terror never experienced before, and unforgettable realms of terror. Of course, Donald Pleasence puts in his best performance as Dr. Loomis the entire series in this film. You immediately want everyone to listen to him, and it's a wonderful, earnest performance by Donald Pleasence, full of such dignity and full of such nervous energy.
I met him 15 years ago. I was told there was nothing left, no reason, no conscience, no understanding, and even the most rudimentary sense of life or death, of good or evil, right or wrong. I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up, because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
So that is why Halloween is the quintessential slasher film, and in my book the greatest horror film of all time. That is my ranking of the entire Halloween franchise. But let me know your rankings of the Halloween movies in the comments below. Let's get into a discussion about the Halloween franchise on Halloween. What better franchise to discuss on the 31st of October? So I'm definitely going to be doing more ranking videos in the future, but I'm also going to be going back to the focus of this channel, which is retro movie reviews and superhero movie reviews. So if you're into that and you're obsessed with movies, definitely be sure to subscribe. Happy Halloween once again everyone, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.